I wanted to do a second video on the Shroud of Turin. I believe any time now there's going to be absolutely conclusive scientific confirmation that's going to completely full circle all the advances in the knowledge of the Shroud. If you've ever looked into it, what scientists have learned, you got the two stories of it's legitimately authentic and exactly what theologians have always said, or it was a brilliant forgery done sometime about 1,000 years ago, around the time of the Crusades. The one thing, as with all subjects, that hurts it or deflects people from going very far with learning about it is that moment in something like 1988 where they did carbon dating on it and declared in newspapers all around the world that it was a medieval forgery. That stigma has stuck and it has been disproven, but that doesn't matter. People don't take into consideration one of the main elements of news and the way it's put out there and who owns the major networks of the outlets of international news. The Zionists, the Jewish bankers that would like nothing more than to disprove any ideas about Jesus. And the carbon dating techniques are flawed. It's been proven that you can have all kinds of contaminants on something that passes through the hands of human beings over the course of centuries. It's one thing to find an artifact that's isolated in a cave or a grave somewhere. A whole other story if it's a piece of linen, like the shroud is, that's been carefully moved around by the hands of human beings during a time when there was the bubonic plague, all kinds of contaminants, whole different world in the Middle Ages. And they took the samples, because they didn't want to mess with the image of Jesus, off the sides that were handled by priests and people doing foldings and displays of the shroud. So when they carbon dated it, there's a real chance what they carbon dated was a fingerprint. It's just asinine. There is so much overwhelming evidence that scientists have found. Like the image itself is not paint. They know that. At best, if it was forged, it's a very, very well careful burned image with the shroud laid over a heated sculpture or something. But even then, you've got the very specifically accurate flailing injuries all over the back and legs, the blood, the accuracy of the Roman wounds, especially down in the foot. Things that were only found by archaeologists just in the last 100 years. The depictions of Jesus were always within correct nailings. I hate talking about the crucifix. I mean, I just hate it. But when you're talking about the Shroud of Turin now, if you're really interested, you got to know what you're talking about. You can't just talk out of your yes, you know. You got to owe some respect to something like this. What I'm talking about is I have really good intuitions and I have a way of confirming major questions. At least confirming them to my satisfaction. I just expect good-hearted people to trust me that there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Yeah. The image in the shroud was created A combination of things. The soul of Jesus coming back into his body, and then the powerful soul of Jesus re-energized, teleporting the physical body out of the shroud, basically through the shroud. Kind of like a scanner, when you scan a piece of paper on a computer, but with the same kind of molecular decomposition and transportation you see in Star Trek, the transporter beam. Enlightened beings, truly enlightened beings, can travel through time and space. They can be invisible, they can be physical, and people should feel lucky that they are not evil-minded. Truly enlightened beings, they don't even want to be among human beings. The rare moments in history when they did care about human beings, like Jesus did, they give it a shot for a little bit in a mission, a missionary state of being, and then they go on to other realms. In case you haven't noticed, there's stars out there, there's universes, galaxies, other places to give a shot at making bad-hearted people good-hearted people or beings. Jesus gave it a real shot. He said over and over again, all these miracles that I do, you can do them too, if you believe in me. And the bad interpretation of that statement, I believe, is that he meant me as in you, your identity, the beauty of you, the concept of me that we all have. I don't think he meant believe in Jesus. He probably meant believe in my message, but he didn't mean worship me, which is what Christianity eventually turned into. A worship cult put out there by dictator priests that just wanted everybody's money. And they got it. It turned into do this or else instead of try this and see. What Jesus said was try this and see how much better your life is. The way the Christian Catholic priests always turned it into do this or else. And the or else was pretty horrifying. Not to mention the scare tactics of the hell and afterlife and the day of judgment. And I believe all those terms seen in the Gospel of John and Revelation and the interpretations of Paul of Tarsus should have been metaphorical instead of terrorist sentences. It's one thing to enlighten someone and ask them to be good instead of saying be good or I'll be bad to you. That's what Christianity turned into, and now it's just a joke where these people get as much money together from Jewish sources to build churches so they can have as big of a service as possible, and they get the biggest blowhard that they can on the pulpit so they can just, like a church that holds 100,000 people, or, one of them that, a lot of them hold like 20,000 people. Can you imagine if everyone in the room gave $5 to the past collection basket? That's what it's about. The Vatican isn't owned by anyone or run by anyone who's of the philosophy of Jesus. They wear those outfits. They got golden things on the wall, and people are dying all over the world, and they just keep getting their money. It's horrifying. None of that has anything to do with the message of Jesus. You ever read the sermons of Jesus? And most people don't, even if they call themselves Christians. There is nothing in there that resembles the horrifying, proselytizing, evil men that get rich off of the gullibility and tender hope of hurting people around the world that just want to have faith in something that has always made sense to them since they were a little kid because of their upbringing. The thing about the Shroud of Turin is that it's real. And it does make you, if you really are in tune with believing that, it makes you afraid of doing the wrong thing. Because you realize that if that's what it's about, and you're just a person, and these supernatural beings can take judgment against you or do things, it makes you afraid to do the wrong thing. Because that's just super powerful stuff. But Jesus said over and over again, you can do these things too. And you look at the advanced cultures of India and the Maya, Egypt, they could do some pretty amazing things, obviously, with what's left of their civilizations. And there's no mathematical or scientific way to explain their architecture or any of that kind of thing. So there is something to enlightenment that makes people 10 times the person they would otherwise. That's what we need today. We need a Jesus, or we need a lot of Jesuses. We need an enlightened force that can basically imagine a force field, around, that stops the guns and stops, that shuts down tanks. They could imagine a tank just blowing up, or they can imagine, evil people of the world being teleported into a prison. Like, if you could name all of them, from George Soros down to Lloyd Blankfein, and you can imagine them and teleport them into Gitmo, an enlightened person could probably do that. Because they can't. If they could, they wouldn't resort to all this underhanded junk of taxing and lying and taking the money and giving it to the militants around the world and laughing about it. Anyhow, it's time for supernatural enlightenment. I don't want these people stopped because of a war or a backlash. I want enlightenment. I want people to just have a combination of Gandhi and Jesus. Because I think that's really possible. Because the evil people of the world are outnumbered. And the overwhelming numbers of people that could stop them are simply distracted and confused. It's about waking up and not participating, not paying when they say what you owe in taxes. Just say, no, you're a criminal. I'm not giving you anything until you stop the crime. If the majority of people did that, we would really get somewhere.